Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara should be home anytime. And today we are checking out the Strider SMF made by Strider Knives. This knife is an American, USA made knife that it does have a pretty big reputation. So let's get into the good and bad on the review of this knife. So this knife is a pretty big knife. By most people's standards, I tend to like big knives. I like small knives. I like medium knives. I just like knives. Some people do have a knife that, you know, like they're like, okay, if it's over this long, that's too big for me. This might be too big for you. I don't know. Let's talk about how big it is. It's about 9 inches with a 4-inch blade. So let's check out a few size comparisons right after I thank the Shadow Man for sending me a whole bunch of amazing knives to review. Not only that, he's gifted us a whole bunch of knives. I mean, he's very generous, and he also, after sending me the React K2 to review, he said I could keep it, which, I mean, I was speechless. This is an amazing React, and so far has been possibly the best React I've felt. React does a lot of knives, so that is a big statement. But yeah, there it is next to the React K2. It's a tiny bit longer than the K2, not by much, but there you guys go. But yes, thank you, Shadow Man. Shadow Man, if you guys don't know, the reason why he's called Shadow Man is because he stays in the shadows. You do not know who he is, but he is always watching. Let's check out some other knives that are around the same length. Here is the Cold Steel Code 4. Here is the Cold Steel Code 4. And you can see the Cold Steel Code 4 is a little bit shorter than it. We'll check out a couple more knives. A lot of people know the Hogue Ritter. And if you know the Hogue Ritter, you already know it is smaller than it. And then here is the Strider SNG. So you can see it is a bigger version. Here is the Cold Steel Recon 1, which they are neck and neck. So if you know the size of the Cold Steel Recon 1, then you pretty much know the size of this knife. Let's do just a couple more since it is such a big knife. Here is the Hinder XM18 3.5 inch. And here is the Hinder XM24. Let's just go like this. So it's about the same size as the XM24. I don't know why I pulled up the 3.5, but there you guys go. Hopefully you guys get the size of this beast. It is a beast, a beautiful beast. And I'm very happy to get to check it out. I like Striders a lot. And before checking the 2 Striders out that he sent, I got to check out only 2 customs, which I loved so much. I mean, just absolute amazing knives. They were, the one was an integral and the other one was the same way this is, or not the same way, but it was a titanium sandwich version where it's 2 different scales. So this knife does have a G10 show side with a titanium flamed lock side. And you can see I got a little something on the blade right there. That will come off, no big deal. And you can see the finishing on the blade. So this has a flat ground drop point blade in PSF-27. I'm going to read you what that blade steel is because I didn't know anything about it before this. PSF-27 tool steel alloy uses the spray forming process resulting in improved wear resistance, toughness, crack resistance, and higher hardness. The result is D2 with better edge holding and toughness than cast D2. Sounds like a pretty decent steel. This does have a very strong construction. This is sandwiched together. So this G10 wraps around here and then connects to the titanium frame lock side. Let's get into this blade just a little bit. So it's not quite 4 inches. It's 3.9 inches. It does have a great sharpening choil right there, right in front of a big, beautiful finger choil. Does have jimping that does work right on top. It's not the sharpest type of jimping, but it does work. It does give you a little traction. It's about 20 thousandths behind the edge. And it does have a nice big thick blade stock, but it cuts pretty good. Not bad blade geometry. It's not like fantastic or anything like that, but it works. It works really good. Nice, thick, reliable tip, but also acute enough to use for utility purposes. And then it has a nice flat here for great push cuts, especially since you can get so close to the blade. Nice belly for slicing. And then, like I already said about the tip, you can use it for utility purposes. This does have like a kind of a coating on it. That might create a little drag. Not really. I didn't really find too much drag, but I'm sure there's a little drag there depending on what you're cutting. But it does have a little bit of texture to it, just like any kind of coated blade does. The finger choil is nice and big. You can use it for just the first nub or the entire finger very nicely. This is the stop pins, as you can see, locks up right there. The G10 is contoured all the way around. You can see the grains of it. It kind of looks pretty cool. It does have a little bit of texturing, not much. It's more slick than textured. But yeah, the clip works great. It doesn't sit very deep, but it does work great. There's quite a bit hanging out of your pocket. And then you see the jimping back here that is for sitting in your palm for when you're flicking it, or for like reverse grips, if you have to stab into something. Yeah, the ergos with the choil are great because my hand kind of sits behind this spot right there. It just works. This feels really good in the hand. When I go down here, though, not so much. This is it feels like I'm holding basically a triangle, almost like I'm holding the bottom of a firearm or something without actually putting my hand all the way on the firearm, if you know what I mean. Like, it just feels a little awkward, but I don't think that this is how the knife was intended to be held, unless if maybe you're chopping something. But for the most part, you're going to hold it like this, which is very comfortable. It's not centered, but I think I can get it centered. I did make I turned a penny basically into something so that I could take it apart. I did take the other one apart and polished it. This one, I just kind of messed with, the action and stuff because it was getting, quite a bit of lock stick. And it still does have it if the marker wears off, but I did put marker on the lock face. So for the action and detent, very easy to middle finger flick, very easy to thumb flick. You can slow roll it. The detent isn't like crazy strong, but it shouldn't be because it's not a flipper. When you're using, the front hole or thumb stud, you want a medium to light detent. You don't want nothing crazy strong. And it's not real strong to where you have to pinch it out and then roll it. You can actually just thumb it out and roll it, which is nice. Now the detent, when you unlock it, it's pretty early. Where is it? Right there. Especially since there's no flipper tab. So if you unlock it, you can just let it drop right there onto your thumbnail, and you'll be just fine. So, and it does drop right down. Now there is a little bit of, you can kind of hear that. Now, I did polish the washers of this one, and it didn't really help that sound. It did get smoother, but you could still hear it. Now, after playing, fidgeting, and using this thing for a long time, that'll probably go away. And it's still pretty smooth. And then even if you unlock it with your finger, you can easily be past the detent and slap it shut. Very easy to fidget with, especially for a big knife like this, and to slow roll. It does have some really cool mechanical sounds that I also like. Sometimes I find myself unlocking it like that, where I just put my thumb on the back, put my finger in between the lock bar, pop it up, pop it open, and then push my thumb forward, swing it around, and shut it. I do find myself doing that from time to time. But yeah, the action's great. The detent's great. It's a little gritty in the pivot, but, you know, not that big of a deal. It's, you know, it's kind of like a work knife anyway. So, you know, yeah, it's not going to be luxuriously smooth, but that's not what it's going for. I can't hate on that, you know. It's not that kind of knife. No play whatsoever, but it does unlock rather easily, at least when it comes to the thumb room you have to get to it. Now, let's get to some bad stuff, because you guys already know there's going to be some bad. One, what are they thinking about that damn lanyard hole? What are we talking about? I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. It's right there. I mean, look at that. It'll get cut off. Basically, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's for something else and I just don't know, because I can't imagine anybody putting a lanyard on that. I mean, can you imagine? You'd be holding this and then your lanyard to be dangling off right there. I mean, I just don't get it. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's not for a lanyard. I don't know. If you guys know that it's for something else, please let me know. I don't. Anyways, like I said before, it does have lock stick and it does wind up coming back. But when I put the marker on the lock face, it does last for quite a while. So, and it has been breaking in better and better. I mean, it was real bad. And the more I flick it, the better it gets. I did feel like I got rid of it for a little while, but then it did come back. Not too big of a deal, because sometimes when I put a marker on the lock face, what winds up happening is I get lock slip out of knives. I've seen that probably more times than I haven't. But in this case, when I put the marker on the lock face, I get absolutely zero lock slip. I mean, it's locked up very, very solid. I mean, just locked up real tight. So I like that. The next bad thing is this clip. You know, there's just so much hanging out of the pocket. I wish that was changed. You know, I don't know, maybe get rid of that and put that there. I don't know, maybe make it a little bit longer. It works good, and it doesn't mess with the hand. It all feels fine. I mean, I do feel it, but it's not bad in the hand. But I do feel a little bit pressing right there, this little lip. But not that big of a deal. The jimping works better on the grip or the handle than it does on the blade. I would have loved to have sharpened it, but in all honesty, it never needed it. I mean, this thing is still very sharp. It's stropped right back without a problem, so there's no point for me to sharpen it. The steel seems like it works really good. I do like the fact that there's big hardware. You know, I love seeing giant hardware like that. But it does screw through to this side. So if you stripped out this side, then you're going to be in some trouble. Luckily, I guess there's so many of them. There's a lot of hardware there, which I like to see a lot of hardware. That just adds to the strength. As long as the hardware is done in a way to where it benefits the strength of the knife, then I like it, you know, and in this case it does. I just kind of wish that there was screws on both sides and it wasn't just screwing into this side. But, you know, that's not really that big of a deal. That's a big nitpick, if anything. It is just a raw titanium, so that is why it doesn't have a lock bar insert. That's probably why we're getting the lock stick when it does come up. I don't know. I'm guessing they carbonized the lock face, but you know, it does stick quite a bit. You know, I don't know. Anyways, Another bad thing that could possibly be just avoided, but when you're cutting with it, stuff can get trapped down in there, especially when you're really deep in materials and you're trying to do repeat cuts, especially if you're trying to do fast repeat cuts. This little choil area does, stuff does get caught in there. Some choils are a little different where they make it, let me get a knife. The choils, when you have the finger where, like the Spyderco Chaparral here, where just the plunge grind is right there, so it just hits, and you can just keep cutting. Nothing can really get trapped. And then you got like other ones where this is the Twosun TS267, I think, where you put your finger and it kind of blocks it in the way. This, since the finger choil's behind the sharpening choil instead of the finger choil becoming the sharpening choil, kind of like the kite fin, I guess I'm trying to say. Like with this, your finger kind of blocks it, so the materials will just hit your finger as you're cutting. With this, you're behind the sharpening choil, so it gives it a place for stuff to get trapped, and this can act like a hook. So that tends to happen quite a bit, unless if you're really paying attention. I guess you could go over the top of it if you really care, but you just got to be careful when you're cutting not to let it go too deep and then that act like a hook. It's a great knife. I do like it a lot. Like I said, the grip, it's a little weird back here, but up here it's fantastic. I love the blade shape. I do like the concept of this type of knife, and let me explain. It's kind of a work knife. Like, I when I think of Strider, right, I think of military, hard work, a knife you're not scared to use, a knife that belongs on the battlefield type of thing. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but that's the way I think of Striders. I think of them as a working knife. They're not trying to be beautiful. They're not trying to be pretty. They're trying to be used. And I'm not saying there aren't fantastic versions of customs that are just exquisite, but I'm saying the base production Striders are work knives, and I like that thought and that mindset. Yeah, great knife. I do like it a lot. There's not a ton of bad on this. Some of the couple things that are bad are kind of pretty bad, like the lock stick. The other things are just, even the lock stick's not that big of a deal because eventually it will work itself out. The centering issue, I do think I can get it centered because if I push it, it goes to centered. And then when I did mess around with the pivots, I did get it very, very close. But then just as I used it and messed with it, it did go back. But I think if I took it apart and put some Loctite in there, it would definitely be fine. So don't look at the centering as a big deal. It will definitely go to centered. Yeah. Great knife. I appreciate everything from you, Shadow Man, and I appreciate you guys watching. I love all you guys. Peace.